Ecological economics. Ecoeconomics refers to both the transdisciplinary and interdisciplinary field of academic research that aims to address the interdependence and coevolution of human economies and natural ecosystems over time and space. It is distinguished from environmental economics, which is the mainstream economic analysis of the environment, by its treatment of the economy as a subsystem of the ecosystem and its emphasis upon preserving natural capital. One survey of German economists found that ecological and environmental economics are different schools of economic thought, with ecological economists emphasizing strong sustainability and rejecting the proposition that natural capital can be substituted by human-made capital. Ecological economics was founded as a modern movement in the works of and interactions between various European and American academics. The related field of green economics is, in general, a more politically applied form of the subject. According to ecological economist Mort Faber, ecological economics is defined by its focus on nature, justice, and time. Issues of intergenerational equity, irreversibility of environmental change, uncertainty of long-term outcomes, and sustainable development guide ecological economic analysis and valuation. Ecological economists have questioned fundamental mainstream economic approaches such as cost-benefit analysis, and the separability of economic values from scientific research, contending that economics is unavoidably normative rather than positive. Positional analysis, which attempts to incorporate time and justice issues, is proposed as an alternative. Ecological economics shares many of its perspectives with feminist economics, including the focus on sustainability, nature, justice and care values. History and development. Early modern interest in ecology and economics dates back to the 1940s in the work of K. William Kapp and Carl Polanyi and the 1960s in work by Kenneth Boulding and Herman Daly. However, the first organized meetings of modern ecological economists occurred in the 1980s. These began in 1982, at the instigation of Lois Banner, with a meeting held in Sweden. Most were ecosystem ecologists or mainstream environmental economists, with the exception of Daly. In 1987, Daly and Costanza edited an issue of Ecological Modeling to test the waters. A book entitled Ecological Economics, by Juan Martinez Aliaga, was published later that year. 1989 saw the foundation of the International Society for Ecological Economics and publication of its journal, Ecological Economics, by Elsevier. Robert Costanza was the first president of the Society and first editor of the journal, currently edited by Richard Howarth. European conceptual founders include Nicholas Trzeski-Retian, K. William Kapp and Carl Polanyi. Some key concepts of what is now ecological economics are evident in the writings of E. F. Schumacher, whose book Small is Beautiful, a study of economics as if people mattered, was published just a few years before the first edition of Herman Daly's comprehensive and persuasive Steady-State Economics. Other figures include ecologists C.S. Holling, H. T. Odum and Robert Costanza, biologist Gretchen Daly and physicist Robert S. CUNY geography professor David Harvey explicitly added ecological concerns to political economic literature. This parallel development in political economy has been continued by analysts such as sociologist John Bellamy Foster. The antecedents can be traced back to the Romantics of the 19th century as well as some Enlightenment political economists of that era. Concerns over population were expressed by Thomas Malthus, while John Stuart Mill hypothesized that the stationary state of an economy was desirable, anticipating later insights of modern ecological economists, without having had their experience of the social and ecological costs of the dramatic post-World War II industrial expansion. As Martinez Aliaga explores in his book, the debate on energy in economic systems can also be traced into the 19th century. For example, Nobel Prize-winning chemist, Frederick Soddy. Soddy criticized the prevailing belief of the economy as a perpetual motion machine, capable of generating infinite wealth. A criticism echoed by his intellectual heirs in the now emergent field of ecological economics. The Romanian economist Nicholas Trzeski-Retian, who was among Daly's teachers at Vanderbilt University, provided ecological economics with a modern conceptual framework based on the material and energy flows of economic production and consumption. His magnum opus, The Entropy Law and the Economic Process, has been highly influential. Articles by Inge Rock and Clive Spash cover the development and modern history of ecological economics and explain its differentiation from resource and environmental economics, as well as some of the controversy between American and European schools of thought. An article by Robert Costanza, David Stern, Lining He, and Chumbo Ma responded to a call by Mick Common to determine the foundational literature of ecological economics by using citation analysis to examine which books and articles have had the most influence on the development of the field. However, citations analysis has itself proven controversial, and similar work has been criticized by Clive Spash for attempting to predetermine what is regarded as influential in ecological economics through study design and data manipulation. In addition, the journal Ecological Economics has itself been criticized for swamping the field with mainstream economics. Nature and ecology. A simple circular flow of income diagram is replaced in ecological economics by a more complex flow diagram reflecting the input of solar energy, which sustains natural inputs, and environmental services, which are then used as units of production. Once consumed, natural inputs pass out of the economy as pollution and waste. The potential of an environment to provide services and materials is referred to as an environment source function, and this function is depleted as resources are consumed or pollution contaminates the resources. The sink function describes an environment's ability to absorb and render harmless waste and pollution. When waste outputs exceeds the limit of the sink function, long-term damage occurs. Some persistent pollutants, such as some organic pollutants and nuclear waste, are absorbed very slowly or not at all. Ecological economists emphasize minimizing cumulative pollutants. Pollutants affect human health and the health of the climate. The economic value of natural capital and ecosystem services is accepted by mainstream environmental economics, but is emphasized as especially important in ecological economics. Ecological economists may begin by estimating how to maintain a stable environment before assessing the cost in dollar terms. Ecological economist Robert Costanza led an attempted valuation of the global ecosystem in 1997. Initially published in Nature, the article concluded on $33 trillion with a range from $16 trillion to $54 trillion. Half of the value went to nutrient cycling. The open oceans, continental shelves, and estuaries had the highest total value, and the highest per hectare values went to estuaries, swamps, floodplains, and seagrass algae beds. The work was criticized by articles in Ecological Economics Volume 25, Issue 1, but the critics acknowledged the positive potential for economic valuation of the global ecosystem. The Earth's carrying capacity is a central issue in ecological economics. Early economists such as Thomas Malthus pointed out the finite carrying capacity of the Earth, which was also central to the MIT study limits to growth. Diminishing returns suggest that productivity increases will slow if major technological progress is not made. Food production may become a problem, as erosion, an impending water crisis, and soil salinity reduce the productivity of agriculture. Ecological economists argue that industrial agriculture, which exacerbates these problems, is not sustainable agriculture, and are generally inclined favorably to organic farming, which also reduces the output of carbon. Global wild fisheries are believed to have peaked and begun a decline, with valuable habitats such as estuaries in critical condition. The aquaculture or farming of piscivorous fish, like salmon, does not help solve the problem because they need to be fed products from other fish. Studies have shown that salmon farming has major negative impacts on wild salmon, as well as the forage fish that need to be caught to feed them. Since the animals are higher on the trophic level, they are less efficient sources of food energy. Reduced consumption of meat would reduce the demand for food, but as nations develop, they tend to adopt high meat diets similar to that of the United States. Genetically modified food, a conventional solution to the problem, presents numerous problems. BT corn produces its own Bacillus thuringiensis toxin protein, but the pest resistance is believed to be only a matter of time. The overall effect of GMF on yields is contentious, with the USDA and FAO acknowledging that GMFs do not necessarily have high yields and may even have reduced yields. Global warming is now widely acknowledged as a major issue, with all national scientific academies expressing agreement on the importance of the issue. As the population growth intensifies and energy demand increases, the world faces an energy crisis. Some economists and scientists forecast a global ecological crisis if energy use is not contained. The Stern Report is an example. The disagreement has sparked a vigorous debate on issue of discounting and intergenerational equity. Global geochemical cycles critical for life. Ethics. Mainstream economics has attempted to become a value-free hard science, but ecological economists argue that value-free economics is generally not realistic. Ecological economics is more willing to entertain alternative conceptions of utility, efficiency, and cost benefits such as positional analysis or multi-criteria analysis. Ecological economics is typically viewed as economics for sustainable development, and may have goals similar to green politics. Schools of thought. Various competing schools of thought exist in the field. Some are close to resource and environmental economics while others are far more heterodox in outlook. An example of the latter is the European Society for Ecological Economics. An example of the former is the Swedish Beijer International Institute of Ecological Economics. Clive Spash has argued for the classification of the ecological economics movement, and more generally work by different economics schools on the environment, into three main categories. These are the mainstream new resource economists, the new environmental pragmatists, and the more radical social ecological economists. International survey work comparing the relevance of the categories for mainstream and heterodox economists shows some clear divisions between environmental and ecological economists. Differentiation from mainstream schools. Some ecological economists prioritize adding natural capital to the typical capital asset analysis of land, labor, and financial capital. These ecological economists then use tools from mathematical economics as in mainstream economics, but may apply them more closely to the natural world. Whereas mainstream economists tend to be technological optimists, ecological economists are inclined to be technological skeptics. They reason that the natural world has a limited carrying capacity and that its resources may run out. Since destruction of important environmental resources could be practically irreversible and catastrophic, ecological economists are inclined to justify cautionary measures based on the precautionary principle. The most cogent example of how the different theories treat similar assets is tropical rainforest ecosystems, most obviously the Yasuni region of Ecuador. While this area has substantial deposits of bitumen, it is also one of the most diverse ecosystems on Earth, and some estimates establish it has over 200 undiscovered medical substances in its genomes, most of which would be destroyed by logging the forest or mining the bitumen. Effectively, the instructional capital of the genomes is undervalued by analyses which view the rainforest primarily as a source of wood, oil tar, and perhaps food. Increasingly, the carbon credit for leaving the extremely carbon-intensive bitumen in the ground is also valued. The government of Ecuador set a price of $350 million for an oil lease with the intent of selling it to someone committed to never exercising it at all and instead preserving the rainforest. While this natural capital and ecosystem services approach has proven popular amongst many, it has also been contested as failing to address the underlying problems with mainstream economics: growth, market capitalism, and monetary valuation of the environment. Critiques concern the need to create a more meaningful relationship with nature and the non-human world than evident in the instrumentalism of shallow ecology and the environmental economists' commodification of everything external to the market system. Topics. Among the topics addressed by ecological economics are methodology, allocation of resources, weak versus strong sustainability, energy economics, energy accounting and balance, environmental services, cost shifting, and modeling. Methodology. A primary objective of ecological economics is to ground economic thinking and practice in physical reality, especially in the laws of physics and in knowledge of biological systems. It accepts as a goal the improvement of human well-being through development, and seeks to ensure achievement of this through planning for the sustainable development of ecosystems and societies. Of course, the terms development and sustainable development are far from lacking controversy. Richard B. Norgaard argues traditional economics has hijacked the development terminology in his book Development Betrayed. Well-being in ecological economics is also differentiated from welfare as found in mainstream economics and the new welfare economics from the 1930s, which informs resource and environmental economics. This entails a limited preference utilitarian conception of value, that is, nature is valuable to our economies, that is because people will pay for its services such as clean air, clean water, encounters with wilderness, etc. Ecological economics is distinguishable from neoclassical economics primarily by its assertion that the economy is embedded within an environmental system. Ecology deals with the energy and matter transactions of life and the earth, and the human economy is by definition contained within this system. Ecological economists argue that neoclassical economics has ignored the environment, at best considering it to be a subset of the human economy. The neoclassical view ignores much of what the natural sciences have taught us about the contributions of nature to the creation of wealth, for example, the planetary endowment of scarce matter and energy, along with the complex and biologically diverse ecosystems that provide goods and ecosystem services directly to human communities, micro and macro climate regulation, water recycling, water purification, stormwater regulation, waste absorption, food and medicine production, pollination, protection from solar and cosmic radiation, the view of a starry night sky, etc. There has then been a move to regard such things as natural capital and ecosystems functions as goods and services. However, this is far from uncontroversial within ecology or ecological economics due to the potential for narrowing down values to those found in mainstream economics and the danger of merely regarding nature as a commodity. This has been referred to as ecologists selling out on nature. There is then a concern that ecological economics has failed to learn from the extensive literature in environmental ethics about how to structure a plural values system. Allocation of resources resource and neoclassical economics focus primarily on the efficient allocation of resources, and less on two other fundamental economic problems which are central to ecological economics: distribution and the scale of the economy relative to the ecosystems upon which it is reliant. Ecological economics also makes a clear distinction between growth and development while arguing that neoclassical economics confuses the two. Ecological economists point out that, beyond modest levels, increased per capita consumption does not necessarily lead to improvement in human well-being, while this same consumption can have harmful effects on the environment and broader societal well-being. Weak versus strong sustainability equals. Ecological economics challenges the conventional approach towards natural resources, claiming that it undervalues natural capital by considering it as interchangeable with human-made capital, labor and technology. The impending depletion of natural resources and increase of climate-changing greenhouse gases should motivate us to examine how political, economic and social policies can benefit from alternative energy. Interestingly enough, shifting our dependence on fossil fuels with specific interest within just one of the above-mentioned factors easily benefits at least one other. For instance, photovoltaic panels have a 15% efficiency when absorbing the sun's energy, but its construction demand is increased 120% within both commercial and residential properties. Additionally, this construction has led to a roughly 30% increase in work demands. The potential for the substitution of man-made capital for natural capital is an important debate in ecological economics and the economics of sustainability. There is a continuum of views among economists between the strongly neoclassical positions of Robert Solow and Martin Weitzman, at one extreme, and the entropy pessimists, unregistered trademark, notably Nicholas Trzeski-Rezin and Herman Daly, at the other. Neoclassical economists tend to maintain that man-made capital can, in principle, replace all types of natural capital. This is known as the weak sustainability view, essentially that every technology can be improved upon or replaced by innovation, and that there is a substitute for any and all scarce materials. At the other extreme, The strong sustainability view argues that the stock of natural resources and ecological functions are irreplaceable. From the premises of strong sustainability, it follows that economic policy has a fiduciary responsibility to the greater ecological world, and that sustainable development must therefore take a different approach to valuing natural resources and ecological functions. Recently, Stanislav Shimlev developed a new methodology for the assessment of progress at the macro scale based on multi-criteria methods, which allows consideration of different perspectives, including strong and weak sustainability or conservationists versus industrialists, and aims to search for a middle way by providing a strong neo-Keynesian economic push without putting excessive pressure on the natural resources, including water or producing emissions, both directly and indirectly. Energy economics equals. A key concept of energy economics is net energy gain, which recognizes that all energy requires energy to produce. To be useful, the energy return on energy invested has to be greater than 1. The net energy gain from production coal, oil and gas has declined over time as the easiest to produce sources have been most heavily depleted. Ecological economics generally rejects the view of energy economics that growth in the energy supply is related directly to well-being, focusing instead on biodiversity and creativity, or natural capital and individual capital, in the terminology sometimes adopted to describe these economically. In practice, ecological economics focuses primarily on the key issues of uneconomic growth and quality of life. Ecological economists are inclined to acknowledge that much of what is important in human well-being is not analyzable from a strictly economic standpoint and suggests an interdisciplinary approach combining social and natural sciences as a means to address this. Thermoeconomics is based on the proposition that the role of energy in biological evolution should be defined and understood through the second law of thermodynamics, but also in terms of such economic criteria as productivity, efficiency, and especially the costs and benefits of the various mechanisms for capturing and utilizing available energy to build biomass and do work. As a result, thermoeconomics is often discussed in the field of ecological economics, which itself is related to the fields of sustainability and sustainable development. Exergy analysis is performed in the field of industrial ecology to use energy more efficiently. The term exergy was coined by Zoran Rant in 1956, but the concept was developed by J. Willard Gibbs. In recent decades, utilization of exergy has spread outside of physics and engineering to the fields of industrial ecology, ecological economics, systems ecology, and energetics. Energy accounting and balance equals. An energy balance can be used to track energy through a system, and is a very useful tool for determining resource use and environmental impacts, using the first and second laws of thermodynamics, to determine how much energy is needed at each point in a system, and in what form that energy is a cost in various environmental issues. The energy accounting system keeps track of energy in, energy out, and non-useful energy versus work done, and transformations within the system. Scientists have written and speculated on different aspects of energy accounting. Environmental services equals, see also, ecosystem valuation and price of life. A study was carried out by Costanza and colleagues to determine the price of the services provided by the environment. This was determined by averaging values obtained from a range of studies conducted in very specific context and then transferring these without regard to that context. Dollar figures were averaged to a per hectare number for different types of ecosystem, for example wetlands, oceans. A total was then produced which came out at $33 trillion, more than twice the total GDP of the world at the time of the study. This study was criticized by pre-ecological and even some environmental economists, for being inconsistent with assumptions of financial capital valuation, and ecological economists, for being inconsistent with an ecological economics focus on biological and physical indicators. The whole idea of treating ecosystems as goods and services to be valued in monetary terms remains controversial. A common objection is that life is precious or priceless, but this demonstrably degrades to it being worthless under the assumptions of any branch of economics. Reducing human bodies to financial values is a necessary part of every branch of economics and not always in the direct terms of insurance or wages. Economics, in principle, assumes that conflict is reduced by agreeing on voluntary contractual relations and prices instead of simply fighting or coercing or tricking others into providing goods or services. In doing so, a provider agrees to surrender time and take bodily risks and other risks. Ecosystems are no different from other bodies economically except insofar as they are far less replaceable than typical labor or commodities. Despite these issues, many ecologists and conservation biologists are pursuing ecosystem valuation. Biodiversity measures in particular appear to be the most promising way to reconcile financial and ecological values, and there are many active efforts in this regard. The growing field of biodiversity finance began to emerge in 2008 in response to many specific proposals such as the Ecuadorian Yasuni proposal or similar ones in the Congo. U.S. news outlets treated the stories as a threat to drill a park, reflecting a previously dominant view that NGOs and governments had the primary responsibility to protect ecosystems. However, Peter Barnes and other commentators have recently argued that a guardianship commons model is far more effective and takes the decisions out of the political realm. Commodification of other ecological relations as in carbon credit and direct payments to farmers to preserve ecosystem services are likewise examples that enable private parties to play more direct roles protecting biodiversity. The United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization achieved near-universal agreement in 2008 that such payments directly valuing ecosystem preservation and encouraging permaculture were the only practical way out of a food crisis. The holdouts were all English-speaking countries that export GMOs and promote free trade agreements that facilitate their own control of the world transport network, the US, UK, Canada and Australia. Not externalities, but cost-shifting equals. Ecological economics is founded upon the view that the neoclassical economics assumption that environmental and community costs and benefits are mutually cancelling externalities is not warranted. Joan Martinez-Alier, for instance, shows that the bulk of consumers are automatically excluded from having an impact upon the prices of commodities, as these consumers are future generations who have not been born yet. The assumptions behind future discounting, which assume that future goods will be cheaper than present goods, has been criticized by Fred Pearce and by the recent Stern report. Concerning these externalities, some like the eco-businessman Paul Hawken argue an orthodox economic line that the only reason why goods produced unsustainably are usually cheaper than goods produced sustainably is due to a hidden subsidy, paid by the non-monetized human environment, community or future generations. These arguments are developed further by Hawken, Amory and Hunter Lovins to promote their vision of an environmental capitalist utopia in natural capitalism, creating the next industrial revolution. In contrast, ecological economists, like Joan Martinez-Alier, appeal to a different line of reasoning. Rather than assuming some form of capitalism as the best way forward, an older ecological economic critique questions the very idea of internalizing externalities as providing some corrective to the current system. The work by Carl William Kapp explains why the concept of externality is a misnomer. In fact, the modern business enterprise operates on the basis of shifting costs onto others as normal practice to make profits. Charles E. Eisenstein has argued that this method of privatizing profits while socializing the costs through externalities, passing the costs to the community, to the natural environment or to future generations is inherently destructive. As social ecological economist Clive Spash has noted, externality theory fallaciously assumes environmental and social problems are minor aberrations in an otherwise perfectly functioning efficient economic system. Internalizing the odd externality does nothing to address the structural systemic problem and fails to recognize the all-pervasive nature of these supposed externalities. Ecological economic modeling mathematical modeling is a powerful tool that is used in ecological economic analysis. Various approaches and techniques include evolutionary, input-output, neo-Austrian modeling, entropy and thermodynamic models, multi-criteria, and agent-based modeling, the environmental Kazets curve. System dynamics and GIS are techniques applied, among other, to spatial dynamic landscape simulation modeling. The matrix accounting methods of Christian Felber provide a more sophisticated method for identifying the common good. criticism, assigning monetary value to natural resources such as biodiversity, and the emergent ecosystem services is often viewed as a key process in influencing economic practices, policy, and decision-making. While this idea is becoming more and more accepted among ecologists and conservationists, some argue that it is inherently false. Macaulay argues that ecological economics and the resulting ecosystem service-based conservation can be harmful. He describes four main problems with this approach. Firstly, it seems to be assumed that all ecosystem services are financially beneficial. This is undermined by a basic characteristic of ecosystems: they do not act specifically in favor of any single species. While certain services might be very useful to us, such as coastal protection from hurricanes by mangroves for example, others might cause financial or personal harm, such as wolves hunting cattle. Secondly, allocating monetary value to nature would make its conservation reliant on markets that fluctuate. This can lead to devaluation of services that were previously considered financially beneficial. Such is the case of the bees in a forest near former coffee plantations in Finca Santa Fe, Costa Rica. The pollination services were valued to over $60,000 a year, but soon after the study, coffee prices dropped and the fields were replanted with pineapple. Pineapple does not require bees to be pollinated, so the value of their service dropped to zero. Thirdly, conservation programs for the sake of financial benefit underestimate human ingenuity to invent and replace ecosystem services by artificial means. Macaulay argues that such proposals are deemed to have a short lifespan as the history of technology is about how humanity developed artificial alternatives to natural unregistered trademark services, and with time passing the cost of such services tend to decrease. This would also lead to the devaluation of ecosystem services. Lastly, it should not be assumed that conserving ecosystems is always financially beneficial as opposed to alteration. In the case of the introduction of the Nile perch to Lake Victoria, the ecological consequence was decimation of native fauna. However, this same event is praised by the local communities as they gain significant financial benefits from trading the fish. Macaulay argues that, for these reasons, trying to convince decision-makers to conserve nature for monetary reasons is not the path to be followed, and instead appealing to morality is the ultimate way to campaign for the protection of nature. See also. References. Further reading, Common, M. and Stagel, S. 2005. Ecological Economics, An Introduction. New York, Cambridge University Press. Costanza, R., Cumberland, J. H., Daly, H., Goodland, R., Norgard, R.B. An Introduction to Ecological Economics, St. Lucie Press and International Society for Ecological Economics, Costanza, R., Stern, D.I., He, L., Marr, see Influential Publications in Ecological Economics, a citation analysis. Ecological Economics 50, 3-4, 261-292. http, Econ Papers Report Ecoloc v3a 53i3a 2004 3i3a 3-43 app 3a 261-292 htm, Daly, H. Economics, Ecology, Ethics, Essays Toward a Steady-State Economy, W. H. Freeman and Company, ISBN 0716711796. Daly, H. and Townsend, K. 1993. Valuing the Earth, Economics, Ecology, Ethics. Cambridge, Massachusetts, London, England, MIT Press. Daly, H. A. OE Steady State Economics a Euro. In, Ecology, Key Concepts in Critical Theory, edited by C. Merchant. Humanities Press, ISBN 0391037951. Daly, H., and J. B. Cobb. For the Common Good, Redirecting the Economy Toward Community, the Environment, and a Sustainable Future. Beacon Press, ISBN 0807047058. Daly, H. Beyond Growth, The Economics of Sustainable Development. Beacon Press, ISBN 0807047090. Daly, H., and J. Farley. Ecological Economics, Principles and Applications. Island Press, ISBN 1597266817. Georgescu Retian, Anne 1975. Energy and Economic Myths. Southern Economic Journal 41, 347-381. Georgescu Retian, N. The Entropy Law and the Economic Process. iUniverse Press, ISBN 1583486003. Gowdy, J., and J. D. Erickson. The Approach of Ecological Economics. Cambridge Journal of Economics 29, 207-222. Greer, J. M. The Wealth of Nature, Economics as if Survival Mattered. New Society Publishers, ISBN 0865716730. Huseman, Michael H., and Joyce A. Huseman. Techno-Physics, Why Technology Won a Euro Unregistered Trademark to Save Us or the Environment, New Society Publishers, Gabriela Island, British Columbia, Canada, ISBN 0865717044, 464 pp. Jackson, Tim. Prosperity Without Growth, Economics for a Finite Planet. London, Routledge Earthscan. ISBN 9781849713238. Krishnan R., Harris J. M., and N. R. Goodwin. A Survey of Ecological Economics. Island Press. ISBN 978-1-55963-411-3. Martinez Alia, J. Ecological Economics, Energy, Environment and Society. Oxford, England, Basil Blackwell. Martinez Alia, J., Rock, IOD's Recent Developments in Ecological Economics, 2 vols, Elgar, Cheltenham, UK. Ra Pke, I. The Early History of Modern Ecological Economics. Ecological Economics 50, 3-4, 293-314. Ra Pke, I. Trends in the Development of Ecological Economics from the Late 1980s to the Early 2000s. Ecological Economics 55, 2, 262-290. Spash, C.L. The Development of Environmental Thinking in Economics. Environmental Values 8, 4, 413-435. Shimlev S.E. Ecological Economics, Sustainability in Practice, Springer 256 pp. http, www.amazon.co.uk/940071971x, Stern, D.I. Limits to Substitution and Irreversibility in Production and Consumption, A Neoclassical Interpretation of Ecological Economics. Ecological Economics 21, 3, 197-215. http, Econ Papers Report Ecoloc v3a 21 3i 3a 1997 3i 3a 33 app 3a 197-215 htm, Takuni, L. Biodiversity and Ecological Economics, Participation, Values, and Resource Management. London, UK, Earthscan Publications. VATN, A. Institutions and the Environment. Cheltenham, Edward Elgar. External links, Brazilian Society for Ecological Economics, Earth Economics, Ecological Economics, Ecological Economics Encyclopedia, International Journal of Green Economics, International Society for Ecological Economics, U.S. Society of Ecological Economics, Schools and Institutes, Gund Institute for Ecological Economics, http, www.uvm.edu/. Ecological Economics at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, http, www.economics.edu Ecological HTML, Beja International Institute for Ecological Economics, http, www.beja.kva.se/. Green Economics Institute, http, www.greeneconomics.org.uk, Environmental Data, Earth Trends World Resources Institute, http, earthchans.ri.org/ index.php, Eco-economy indicators, http www.earth-policy.org, NOAA Economics of Ecosystems Data and Products http www.economics.noaa.gov/ Goal equals ecosystems, miscellaneous, New Economics Foundation http www.neweconomics.org, Green Economist, http greeneconomist.org/ Sustainable Prosperity, http Sustainable Prosperity / an ecological economics article about reconciling economics and its supporting ecosystem, http www.fsfedus21 pre-htm, Economics in a Full World, by Herman E. Daly, http Cefumdedu Scientific American Daily 05 PDF, Robert Nadeau. Environmental and Ecological Economics. The Encyclopedia of Earth. Steve Charnovitz, Living in an Economy, Environmental Cooperation and the GATT, Kennedy School of Government, April 1994. Global List of Ecological Economics-related organizations on Wiser Earth, Ecological Economics Portal on Wiser Earth.